Charles Bronson walks into a Hollywood casting office for the lead role in a major Western when the director takes one look at his face and says, "You're too ethnic for America. We need someone who looks like a real cowboy." What happens in the next 4 minutes doesn't just change the director's mind, it changes Hollywood's understanding of what an American hero actually looks like. Los Angeles, California, August 1968, Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. The offices of Paramount Pictures on Melrose Avenue, 20th floor, corner suite, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, where dreams are manufactured and sold to the world. The air conditioning hums quietly, fighting the August heat. Leather furniture arranged around a mahogany conference table. Awards and movie posters covering the walls like trophies from conquered territories. Charles Bronson sits in a chair that probably cost more than his first car, wearing his best suit. Navy blue, clean, but not expensive. His one good tie, the one Linda picked out for occasions like this. His shoes are polished. His hair is combed. At 47 years old, he spent 15 years grinding through small parts, playing villains and supporting characters, waiting for someone to see past his face to the actor underneath. Today feels different. Today might be the break he's been working toward his entire career. The lead role in Once Upon a Time in the West, a big-budget Western from acclaimed director Martin Kellerman, a chance to be the hero instead of the heavy, a chance to show audiences what Charles Bronson can do when given a real character to play. Across the table sits Kellerman himself, mid-50s, silver hair, tan from Malibu weekends, wearing a white linen shirt that probably costs more than most people make in a week. This is his kingdom, his domain, where he decides who becomes a star and who remains invisible. He's made careers out of pretty boys and relegated talented actors to bit parts because they didn't fit his vision of what America wants to see on screen. Next to Kellerman sits Harvey Goldman, the studio executive who greenlights projects and controls budgets. Conservative suit, expensive watch, the look of a man who reduces art to numbers and dreams to profit margins. He's here because this Western represents a major investment. $20 million that needs to return $40 million. No room for risky casting choices. Charles has read the script 3 times, knows every line of dialogue, every character motivation, every scene transition. This role was written for him, even if they don't know it yet. A mysterious gunfighter with a tragic past, seeking justice in a corrupt frontier town. A man whose face tells stories of hardship and survival. A character who needs authenticity, not just good looks. Kellerman flips through Charles's photographs without much interest. Headshots that show intensity and experience but not conventional Hollywood handsomeness. A face carved by poverty and hard work into something unmistakably ethnic. Lithuanian father, Lipka Tatar ancestry, features that speak of immigration and struggle. "Mr. Bronson," Kellerman says without looking up, "I've seen your work. You're a competent actor. Professional, reliable. That's not the problem." Charles waits, doesn't speak, doesn't show desperation even though this meeting represents everything he's worked toward for 2 decades. Just sits quietly, hands folded, ready to hear what the problem is. Goldman lights a cigarette, exhales slowly. "The problem is marketability, Mr. Bronson. This is $100 million worldwide release. We need someone who can open a picture internationally. Someone audiences will accept as an American hero." Still Charles waits, lets them dig their own grave with assumptions. "You're..." Kellerman gestures vaguely at Charles's face. "You look foreign, ethnic, not what audiences expect from a Western hero. They want to see Gary Cooper, John Wayne, Steve McQueen. Classic American features, clean cut, all American." Charles feels something cold settle in his chest. Not surprise. He's heard this before from a dozen casting directors in a dozen offices, but disappointment. Disappointment. That these men who decide what stories get told and who gets to tell them, see only packaging instead of substance. "Frankly," Goldman continues, gaining confidence, "you're too ethnic for America. Those cheekbones, that nose, those eyes. You look like, well, like an immigrant. Americans want to see Americans on screen. They want heroes who reflect their values, their appearance, their idea of what the West was really like. The words hang in the air like smoke. Ethnic, foreign, immigrant. Charles thinks about his father, dead in a Pennsylvania mine, when Charles was 10. Thinks about his mother raising 11 children alone in coal country. Thinks about the years of poverty, of hunger, of working construction before acting found him. Thinks about serving his country in World War II, flying bomber missions over the Pacific, earning his right to call himself American with blood and service. And these men, who've never done a day's honest labor in their lives, are telling him he's not American enough for American audiences. The brutal truth, Kellerman says, is that you don't look like a cowboy. You look like someone the cowboy would be fighting. The villain, the foreigner, trying to steal American land. That's the role you were born to play, not the hero. Goldman stubs out his cigarette. We need someone clean-cut for this role. Someone who looks like he belongs on a horse, not like he just got off a boat from Eastern Europe. Charles sits quietly for a long moment. The silence stretches. They expect him to thank them for their time, and leave now to accept their judgment and shuffle out defeated, like every other ethnic actor who doesn't fit the Hollywood mold. Instead, Charles speaks. His voice is quiet, controlled, carrying the weight of 47 years of living in America while being told he doesn't look American enough. Gentlemen, he says, may I tell you about the real American West? Kellerman looks surprised. Most actors thank him for his time and leave. They don't ask to continue the conversation after being dismissed. Make it quick, Goldman says, already checking his watch. Charles leans forward slightly, not aggressive, just engaged. Present. The way he's learned to be present in every scene, no matter how small. You say I look foreign, Charles begins. You're right. My father came to this country from Lithuania, came with nothing, worked in coal mines, died underground when I was 10 years old. But you know what? That's exactly who built the American West. Kellerman's expression changes slightly. He's still listening. The West wasn't settled by movie stars from Malibu, Charles continues. It was built by immigrants, Polish miners in Colorado, German farmers in Kansas, Irish railroad workers, Chinese laborers, Italian stonemasons. Men who looked like me, men who talked funny, men who didn't fit your idea of what Americans should look like. Charles pauses, looks directly into their eyes. You want authentic Western casting? Cast someone who looks like the people who actually lived it, who survived it, who built something from nothing with their bare hands because they had no choice. The office has gone completely quiet. Goldman's cigarette burns forgotten in the ashtray. I've been watching Westerns my whole life, Charles says, and I've been waiting to see my people on screen. Not as villains or comic relief, as heroes, as the Americans they actually were. The men who did the dirty, dangerous work that turned wilderness into civilization. Charles stands up, doesn't hurry, doesn't storm out, just rises with dignity. You say Americans want to see Gary Cooper and John Wayne, but there are millions of Americans who look more like me than like them. First-generation Americans, second-generation Americans, Americans whose fathers died building this country. Don't they deserve to see themselves as heroes too? He straightens his tie, picks up his hat. You're not just casting a movie, gentlemen. You're deciding what America looks like to the world. You're choosing whether the American dream is only for people who look a certain way, or whether it's for everyone willing to fight for it. Charles walks toward the door, stops, turns back. My father never saw himself as a hero in a movie. Died too young, worked too hard. But he was more of a hero than any cowboy who ever lived. He came to a strange country, learned a new language, worked in conditions that would kill softer men, also his children could have chances he never had. Charles opens the door, pauses. That's the American story, gentlemen, not the sanitized version, the real one. And if you're not ready to tell that story, then you're not ready to make a real Western. He leaves. The door closes quietly behind him. Kellerman and Goldman sit in silence for a long time, staring at the photographs still spread across their desk, seeing something different now. Not just ethnicity and foreignness, but strength, authenticity. The face of America as it actually is, not as they've always imagined it. 2 hours later, Goldman calls Charles's agent. There's been a discussion, a reconsideration. They want Charles to read for the role again. Tomorrow, with a different perspective. But Charles has other plans. That afternoon, he gets a call from Italian director Sergio Leone. Leone has been watching American westerns, studying American actors, looking for someone who can bring authenticity to his vision of the American West. Someone who looks like he's actually lived the life his character would have lived. Leone offers Charles the lead role in Once Upon a Time in the West, not despite his ethnic appearance, but because of it. Because Leone understands that the real American West was built by men who looked exactly like Charles Bronson. The film becomes a classic. Charles becomes an international star, not by changing who he was, but by finding people who could see who he'd always been. Meanwhile, Kellerman's sanitized Western flops. Audiences reject the pretty boy lead as unconvincing, inauthentic, too clean for the dirty work of frontier justice. The film loses money and disappears from theaters within a month. 4 minutes in an office in 1968. 4 minutes when an actor refused to accept someone else's definition of what an American hero should look like. 4 minutes that changed one man's career and eventually Hollywood's understanding that authenticity matters more than conventional beauty. Charles Bronson proved that American heroes don't have to look like movie stars. They just have to look like Americans. Real Americans, working Americans. Americans whose fathers built this country with their hands and their sweat and their dreams. The man they said was too ethnic for America became the face of American cinema worldwide. Because sometimes the person everyone overlooks is exactly who the world needs to see. 4 Minutes of Truth, in 1968, created decades of iconic performances. 4 minutes of refusing to accept limitation opened doors that had been closed to ethnic actors for generations. That's what happens when someone believes in themselves enough to educate others about what America actually looks like. Charles Bronson didn't become American when he became famous. He helped America recognize what it had always been,